Hello, welcome back. Nigel here with you once again, Nigel's Modelling Bench, and here we are now with part 2 of this exhilarating subject of removing sink marks. So I've done a couple of parts here. So it's now 24 hours after I've done the part 1, where I filled these in with, come here, Mr. Surfacer 500. Okay, if you remember, I just brush painted it in, and we've left it for 24 hours to dry in this very hot weather. If it's winter time, I'd probably leave it 48 hours, because the Mr. Surfacer is a wonderful product. The problem is, if you sand it back too quickly, it will shrink. Okay, so it will carry on shrinking, and also it will clog up your sanding sticks. So if when you're sanding it you find it starts to build up on the stick, stop. Just leave it, come back the next day, try again, because if it's clogging up your sanding stick, it's not dry enough, it's not hard. So bear that in mind. That's the one advantage with this horrible hot weather, is it does actually make your paints dry quicker. But the trouble is, you can't do any airbrushing because it just dries on the surface before it even, it dries before it's even hit the surface, should I say. So here we go with the 400 grit sanding stick. You can see now here, see the build up on there. I can wipe this on a piece of denim and it's sort of removed it, so it's not so bad. It will always clog up your sanding sticks because it is so soft. Something I have seen done before is using a piece of blue tack to remove the residue from your stick. But as you can see here, we can just sand this out. I'm being careful not to rub this raised detail out next to the windscreen. But we can just sand that out. You can see going in circular motion and straight, and basically just keep going until you've got until the sides are faded in. I've also got here a selection of little skinny sanding sticks. These are from they're Flory, and they're the icky sticky ones from Australia that Annie sent me over. So this is an icky sticky here, but it's worn out. I've pretty much run out of them. So there we go. So that's how to do a flat panel. Here we've got a really flat panel. So I just take my 400 grit Infini sanding stick and just rub over, and as you can see, we can just literally sand away and just keep sanding away until we end up with a nice soft feathered edge on all of the Mr. Surfacer. You can go coarser should you want to, if you want to. The trouble is, it may all happen a bit too quick and you may end up putting gouge marks in your plastic or whatever. This plastic isn't that hard. Somebody commented in my review about the plastic being exactly the same, it's just green. I'm going to tell you a little story while I'm sanding, and this is fact, this is not fiction, this is my personal experience in dealing with plastic mouldings. Many years ago, I used to work for a fuel injection company called Delphi Diesel Systems, and we made, the branch I worked at, we made injector systems for diesel trucks. Now then, I used to be in charge, I was the principal engineer in charge of the manufacture of the stators for the E3 injectors. For mainly the biggest customer was Volvo. And the stators were injection moulded. That was where I got my experience from. They were over moulded coil assemblies made into a unit that became a sort of electromagnet. And because it was electromagnet, it had a little hole in it where there was a plug that went in, and there were 4 terminals in this hole. There are 4 holes for the pins to go into for the connector to energize the 2 coils, so you could operate the MCV and the SV valve. Now these components were heat treated, okay, and then they were ground. So post moulding, before they were ground, they were heat treated just to remove any of the stresses incurred during the moulding process. So what we used to do was put this plug in before they were heat treated and then send them off for grinding. And the reason we put the plug in before heat treating was because sometimes you would get a residue come off the plastic, like an enamel kind of substance, and if that went in the hole, that would prevent the connectivity of the terminal. So what we used to do was put this plug in, and the plug would seal the hole up, and then when it was ground, it stopped all the grinding debris, oil and everything going into the connector, and it kept everything nice and clean. We then moved on to automate the process of fitting the plug. So what we did was built a little robot machine that would identify the plug, and the plug was like it was only about 4mm diameter, but it was circular like that with a tab in the middle, so you had like a flat base, had a ring around it like an ashtray, and had a bar across it. So the robot had a camera, so basically the little plugs would sit in a tray, and they'd be fed down a hopper, and the camera would look at them, and if it saw no slot, i.e. the plug's upside down, it rejected it, and if it saw the tab, the slot, it could orientate the robot so that it could come down. If the slot was here, the robot would come down, pick it up. If the slot was like that, it would orientate itself to pick up like that, and then it would always put the plug in the same orientation into the stator. The plan was then to have another robot to remove the plugs, but I don't think we ever got round to that. Anyway, these plugs were red, and they had to be red so that they were obvious to the assembly team that assembled the injector, that if they saw a red plug in there, they would instantly reject it or remove the plug or whatever. So everything was fine and everything was going really well. Then all of a sudden we found that these plugs all started falling out during grinding. So we did an investigation, well, I did an investigation, and found that the actual plugs were shrinking during the heat treatment process. Bit weird. It was only about 60 degrees. It wasn't particularly hot. It was just to you know, sort of anneal the plastic, as it were. So very, very weird. So I did an investigation with the company that I won't mention the name of the company, but there was a company that we used to make the plugs for us, these little blanking plugs, and they said there had been a change in the material, but the actual specification of the material was exactly the same. And I said, well, it's not the same because it's shrinking. No, it's the same material. No, it's not, it's shrinking. It turned out that the manufacturer had stopped using cadmium. Cadmium is outlawed now, I believe, but the manufacturer had stopped using cadmium to give the red colour in these plugs, and they'd replaced it with another material. So now these plugs were shrinking because they had a change of material. So, and it was literally colour. There was no other change other than the pigments, whatever you want to call them, used to make the colour. And what we found, we did some tests, so we thought, well, we'll try blue. We needed bright colours so that it stood out like a sore thumb for the assembly process. So we tried blue, we tried yellow, we tried green, and every single one we used shrunk except for one, black. The only colour plastic we could use to make this, it was a nylon type plastic material, the only colour we could use was black. Now the trouble is, black is not a very bright colour, as we all know, so it wasn't easily noticeable to the assembly team. The trouble being that the plug that went in had these 4 prongs on it, and it would go through, the terminal plug would go through that plug, and it would work absolutely fine for a few thousand miles, and then it would all start to go wrong. So that was why we had to make sure the plug could be seen. So yeah, the only colour we could use was black. And the trouble was, obviously the people that built the injectors wouldn't spot a black plug in the bottom of a hole. And also, the camera that we used to orientate the plugs to pick them up couldn't see black. So we had a real nightmare on our hands. And in the end, I think what I did, I can't remember, this was years and years ago, I think what I did was went out on a limb and made the plugs bigger, so they were a tighter fit, but when they shrunk they would still stay in there, and then we could stay with the red. So when people say it's exactly the same material, it's just a different colour, no, because generally with plastics the colour is either in the granules that you buy to mould with, okay, or it's a mix of 2 or 3 different shades of granules. So yeah, when people say it's exactly the same plastic as the grey, it's just green, that's not necessarily true. It may well be the same specification, it may well have the same, you know, specification on the sheets and everything, all the names and the measurements and all that may be the same, but there will be a difference, believe me. So that's from my experience, and I'm sure there will be people that will comment and argue and everything, but I'm not speaking about theory, I'm not speaking about textbooks, I'm speaking about experience. So there we go. Okay, so with rubbing these out, you can see we've got a nice feathered edge now, so you can see where those sink marks were, and they are basically gone. So all these people that are slating this model for having all these terrible sink marks and everything, I mean, admittedly, I've got a good one here. I will give them that. But it's not too much bother to get rid of them. And there are people that say you shouldn't have to do this on a 2025 kit, and they are completely right. But unfortunately, we don't live in a perfect world, and this happens. And I'd be doing, if I was building that Tamiya 148th K2 ambulance right now, I'd be doing exactly the same. So you know, and there'd be people saying, oh, yeah, but you've got to expect that. But because this is Airfix, they jump on the bandwagon and start to hate on it and everything. I'm going to use a coarser stick on there to break that down, and then finish off with the 400. This 400 is pretty worn out, and I don't want to use a new one because, as I say, Mr. Surfacer tends to clog up your sticks anyway. One little tip I've had from Moss, who's actually building one of these, when this toolbox goes into the floor, it has this tab and it goes into a slot. In fact, we'll have a look, because I've got the floor here right in front of me. Let's put that down there. Here is said floor. Come here. So this is going to sit in that slot there, and you can see that it has, I guess it's going to go in there, yeah. Was it going like that? What he said was it's got, wherever it goes, I can't see now, but wherever it goes, it has a little bit of movement in it. Move it forward. If you have it pulled back, the bulkhead behind the cab won't fit. So make sure it's in the slot and forward. So bear that in mind when you build yours. There's a little tip from Moss for you. So there we go. So as you can see, it's easy to do. Sorry about my waffling on with my story, but I just wanted to get that across to clarify my experience with colour in plastic. So basically, yeah, what I'm saying is the red plastic that we used before they removed the cadmium didn't shrink. All the other colours were unchanged and they all shrunk except for black. So that means that during the years when they were putting cadmium in, it was only the red and black that didn't shrink. And then after they took the cadmium out, replaced it with something else, it was only the black that didn't shrink. And there we go. Right. So I'm just going to carry on with this. As you can see, an easier bit here, a nice flat piece. We can come along here and just, with our worn out, it's absolutely worn out. This has got literally no sanding ability left in it. Let me get this 600 here. This is probably better because it's less worn. And there we go. As you can see, it just feathers out what you're looking for. is a soft feathered edge. Okay, if you end up with a hard edge, say you end up with something like that looks like that there, you either haven't sanded it enough or you need to put more in. Okay, or you can just keep sanding until it is feathered. After all, it is a flat panel and it doesn't really matter. But there you go. You can see on there we've still got a hard edge here and may need to put another little drop in there, we shall see. And of course, if you want to, you can start off with a coarser stick. Just remove the bulk of it. Just remember, I put a lot on because I knew it would shrink back. Just remove the bulk like that and then come in with your finishing stick just to finish it off. And being careful, I've got some raised detail here I don't want to sand away. And there you go. So I'm going to get the rest sanded. I'm going to turn the camera off, and then when I've got the rest sanded, I'll come back and show you how it all looks. Okay, there we go. So as you can see, all sanded out. Remember I said on this plate here, you had this rectangular plate here and the small one at the front here. I'll replace those with a bit of plastic card, but it's easier to do that than sand around them. It's easier to get a nice flat surface just by sanding like this rather than trying to sand around it. On the other side, there's this little sort of, I don't know what it is, this is a little semicircular bit here. So I have actually sanded around that because I think that would be quite difficult to get looking right, made from a piece of scrap plastic. But again, we've got this little piece here and this little piece here. I'm not going to do that until I've actually built the model, because when this goes together, that is going to butt up like that. And it would be lovely to be able to come in with some filler or Mr. Surface or whatever and sand that nice and flat. And with that plastic lump there, it'll be difficult to do. So I'll do that after it's built. Okay, this one here, when you look on the actual box front, they've got like a grab rail or a step or something there on it. But when you actually look in the instructions, they tell you to drill out a couple of holes. Deckel protective paper there. They tell you to drill out a couple of holes in the sides here, where a grab rail is going to go. So the grab rail foot, whatever it is, step is what I'm looking for. You can see there's a step in there, a grab rail there. So that is just left as a plate. So not sure if the CAD model's right or if the kit's right. Although there may be a different version that does actually have the step there, which is why they flashed over these holes for you to drill out yourself. So we shall see. This one here, there's definitely a step going in there. So as you can see, that's all done. So it's just, I mean, it's literally just a little bit of work, a little bit of Mr. Surfacer, and the problems are sorted. The ejector pin marks, I've actually sanded them out as well. So these are two opposites. With the sink marks, you need to sand to a feathered edge. With ejector pin marks, you need to sand to a hard edge. So if when you sand you don't have a perfect circle, like you can see I've got a little bit left on there, that's not a perfect circle. That's slightly that way. So we just need to take some more out of there until we get a perfect circle, and that way you know that you have sanded out the ejector pin mark. Okay, there's a little bit you can see there on that one. You can see it's a bit shiny. In fact, the best thing to do, if I get a pencil, I can show you this easily. If I get a pencil and draw over that ejector pin mark there, and then I sand it again, you will see. You can use magic marker, but I wouldn't recommend it because it keeps coming through the paint. But there you go, you can see there that area where it hasn't sanded, so that needs some more in there. However, being the roof, I'll probably just leave it as it is, or even just keep sanding until it's gone because it's the roof. I haven't done inside here yet actually, so I need to do those. I've done inside the side panels, they're all done. That one there could do with a bit more sanding actually. I'm using this coarser stick on the inside because it's not so visible, and then I can finish off with the 600 like so. As I say, we need to see a perfect circle because the ejector pins are a perfect circle. So we have a bit more on there as well, I think. And you can see here how that one's sanded out. It's like giving us a crescent. That's because the top of the ejector pin wasn't quite flat, so it's lower on one side than the other. But again, we could really do with a drop more Mr. Surfacer in that one. Normally, I would, as you know, I would use black CA glue to fill my ejector pin marks, but because you see that one's completely disappeared now, it's sanded away. But because I had the Mr. Surfacer, I just used the Mr. Surfacer. So there we go. So that's that. Right. The roof spoiler, whatever it is, that's gone on, that's sanded out lovely. Toolbox, all sanded out. Front panel there, sides, roof. I didn't bother putting any Mr. Surfacer on the roof because it doesn't really need it. The only place it would need it, if any, is along there. But then this is going to go on and cover it all up anyway, so I'm not too bothered about that. And on the ends here you can see all feathered out there. Same here, all feathered out. So as you can see, it is not a lot of work to achieve a perfectly flat surface. And for all you Airfix haters out there, yes, it should have been better. Yes, it could have been better. Yes, the quality control needs to be looked at. Yes, they should bring all the production back to the UK. No, they shouldn't mould them in India. And all the rest of it that's going to come. Yeah, you want to keep on hating Airfix, you carry on. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. But I agree it shouldn't be like it, and I agree they should bring production back to the UK. But look what happened when they did bring production back to the UK with the Spitfire. They couldn't make them fast enough for the release, and the shops were limited to 12 each, I think, when the first release went out, the 24 scale Spitfire Mark 9. So there we go. But we didn't have problems with sink marks and flash and all that on that one, did we? Anyway, right, I will see you all soon. Whether I'm going to start a build of this now or not, I don't know. But I'm just going to get all these ejector pin marks in here sanded out and then go from there. I'll see you all soon. As I say, Moss6510, he's doing a build of it. I don't think he's video building it, but he is putting photos up of the build on his Facebook page. So go and have a look over there. Alright, I'll see you all soon. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.